Oh, hi. Hey, welcome back to Mark Holbus a vlog. Just doing a little work on the channel here right now, guys. I'm going to give you, how about two things? Number one, let's talk about winter. It's coming very, very soon. Obviously, snow's flying, and I see a lot of you guys talking about your Jags and your sports cars, and a lot of you are talking about, getting them essentially wrapped up for winter time. And, I've seen a lot of views already all over the internet where people are getting snow already. So we'll talk about winterizing your F Type. I mean, everybody's got their own things that they like to do, but I want to share that with you. So before we do that, how about I just give you a quick tour since I'm on my way out of the studio right now. I'll show you around a little bit what I like to do and kind of the way I've got this set up around here and how this helps me facilitate a lot of my videos. And obviously, this is where all the magic happens. Obviously, right here, this is where I do a lot of my editing. Most of the editing I do myself personally on both channels. So Mark Holbus and as well Exotic Car Play Place. So I do a lot of the edits, and I'll do it with basically a Mac. And there you'll notice I've got a couple camera rigs going on there. And with that, we use my gimbal. There's my gimbal, and I use a Sony a6300 sitting on the gimbal, and I use the old cattail on there for the wind. And down here, you'll notice this is the camera I often use quite when I'm doing a lot of the videos. I'm filming actually with the ZV-1 Sony right there, and I've got my little essentially my tripod there. For me right there, there's some pictures. Those are my motivators to keep me on trucking. And over here is where I keep a lot of my gear, so when I'm ready to set off, I'm ready to rock and roll. I got a backpack, throw my junk in there, and I'm ready to go. Here we have the backdrop of some of the videos you guys see. Obviously, we have some of my favorite cars. Let's just do a quick walk down. Ferrari F50, love it. You can't go wrong. The carbon fiber chassis, though, did you know that they have to be fully reconditioned every X amount of years? It's a very finicky car, and that's why a lot of these just wind up in museum pieces. Not a lot of people are driving them. Here, Porsche GT1, gotta love that. Hey, M5, the E60 version, we have one of these in the garage, and you've seen that car. Dodge Viper, love it. Now, as you'll notice, the kids have snapped off the wing. Hey, you know what? That's what happens when you have children. We have an old beast here, and, I've always been a fan of Porsches, and here we have a 993 twin turbo. This is literally one of the best Porsches ever of all time. Gallardo. This is a Spider version of what I just sold, and here we go, another white Gallardo there. And here the new Lamborghini Cyan, we have a Diablo as well as a Murcielago Roadster LP640, and of course another barrage of Porsches right here. And here we have my backdrop, ECPP. A lot of times I light this up as a backdrop. And here's one of my motivators, the Lamborghini Murcielago SV. I love that car. Right here we have a Graphtec vinyl cutter plotter. So this is essentially designed to cut some vinyl. Right down there, you'll notice I do some vinyl work here and there. I used to sell a lot more products. These days, I'm not doing a lot of that. I generally don't have a lot of time, to be honest, with doing the videos and all of that. But anyway, let's head on out to the garage, and I'll show you the F-Type and some of the winterization aspects that you might consider if you're going to put your car away for wintertime. Now, there we have the glorious F-Type, and a lot of you guys are probably wondering, how do I get ready for wintertime? You could just park the car, but I wouldn't personally suggest that. There's some things you probably want to do if you want to take care of this for the long term. Hey, if it's a lease and you're going to turn the car back in 2 or 3 years, who cares? Fill it up with gas and park it. But you know what? There's more than that, and you probably want to take care of it if you care about your car at all. But let's do a little walk around. I'll show you some of the things that I do with the car. I mean, just firstly, looking at here, I always wash the car. You always want to make sure that you give it a good wash job before you park it. Never hurts to get some of the road grime off. It also allows you to do some inspections because maybe there's some chips and scratches and things you want to deal with throughout the wintertime. It maybe gives you an opportunity to kind of look it over. But give the car a good clean. And also, as far as that goes, interior-wise, you want to make sure that you do a real good leather treatment. That's something that I would always recommend, is always use a leather treatment. And I actually had on a recent video, somebody asked me that question, what do I use for a product? Well, there's probably guaranteed there's better products on the market, but I'll show you the one that I use. For me, the product I use on the leather interior right there, this is what I'm using right now. I find it pretty pliable. It's nice to work with. And that is right there. If you look, we use the Simonize. And of course, you see step 2, detail. This is the leather conditioner. Now, you should be using a cleaner. So I'm using this more as, again, the conditioning component. You should do a cleaning, because if you just keep putting wax over dirty leather, you're going to have an ugly finish. Particularly a lot of you guys with some of the beautiful interiors like the whites or the bone colored interiors or red seats, you want to make sure that you clean it first. Now, I ran out of the leather cleaner, but I use similar products. So there's a Simonize. I do use this, but use the cleaner first. Make sure the seats are clean, and then you use a conditioner like this. And that way, you're good to go as far as, leathers smells good. It's supple and soft, and it's good for the entire winter. As of course, a lot of you guys know, if you live further in the north like I do, if you're from certain states in the north, think Montana's and Idaho's and all of those, and all of the Dakotas, for example. A lot of these states and Canada often have very dry winters because you get very, very cold weather. The humidity goes away and it becomes very, very dry. The air is very dry. And because of that, leather can start to crack. So you want to make sure you treat it so leather's got a protective coating and it's soft and supple. And it smells nice when you get in you pull the door open in the springtime. That's basically what I do. Anyway, I treat the leather so it smells good, feels good, and it'll last a lot longer than if you neglect it, it's going to neglect you, essentially. But so that's what I do. I take care of the cosmetics, make sure the interior is clean. I also give it a vacuum, and do essentially whatever isn't done with leather conditioner. I might Armor All some of the lower areas. You get some of the vinyl down around the foot pedal area, some of the lower section, maybe in the threshold area, or some of the plastics back, in this area, or opening the hatch. Those areas around, I might use a little bit of the leather conditioner if I still got some on a rag, or I just use good old-fashioned Armor All on the plastics. But I've experienced Armor All a lot of times where you get a little bit of a residue, or it starts to turn yellow, or I don't know, it starts to react with certain plastics, and you wind up with a weird yellowy film, and it almost seems to pull certain or leach certain chemicals out of the plastic. So I kind of use that, sparingly. I'd rather use even the leather conditioner on the plastics wherever I can. So if I'm doing my leather seats, I kind of expand that over and do a lot of the plastics like that. Now, enough about that. The other thing, of course, is your tires. Here we've got pretty good air in here. Wintertime, as the weather gets cold outside, sometimes the tires, they start slightly deflating. Air pressure starts to diminish slightly with the colder air, with the colder temps, particularly if you're just using standard air. If you're using nitrogen, it has less of an impact. I mean, they say nitrogen's a more stable gas and it has less fluctuations due to temperature, but I found you can still get a little bit of a swing. So you want to make sure, if you're parking the car for a long period of time, that you're pumping up the pressure a little bit higher than you normally would. So, because if you don't do that, what you can actually have, or I've experienced, I had a 911 Turbo a bunch of years ago that I had to throw away the tires, almost a brand new set of tires. They were only a couple years old, and I had to get a new set because I just couldn't get the square worked off of them. Like they sat for so long, slightly underinflated, and then came springtime and they almost squared off at the bottom, sitting on cold concrete like this. And that is horrible. And then, driving down the road with this aggressive shimmy, it's a terrible thing. So make sure you overpressure them a little bit. Don't go grossly over. You don't want to exceed the pressure rating of any tires, but that's something I always do, is pressure up the tires. Another key ingredient is the oil service. Now, if you look right here, I've got the fluid extractor by Power Fist. This we got at Princess Auto. That's a pretty generic tool, but obviously there's people online that do their own oil servicing. And, as I mentioned before, right now the car is under warranty. I typically take it to the dealer, but I'm prepared with all the right tools. So oil extractor, so you can do the quick suck out of the top instead of having to drain the oil out of the bottom. I mean, when you do the drain out of the bottom, obviously that's the best way. You're getting all the gunk to pour out the bottom and you're getting a cleaner flush. But if you do more frequent oil services and you suck it out from the top, it makes it fast, furious, and honestly, what I've found, typically in the past doing that on other vehicles, if you do it often enough and you change your oil filters, then that becomes less of a problem. You have less gunk buildup if you're doing it more frequently. And the importance of doing the oil change in the fall versus the spring. I mean, I know a lot of people, they say, I like to start and run my car for 15 minutes during the winter. First of all, no, I never do that, and that's a horrible thing. Why? Because if you never get the engine up to operating temperature, a lot of people figure it's not going to hurt anything, but it actually does. you build up condensation and you build up water, moisture, and acids within the oil. And if you don't get a chance to properly heat the engine up and run it and take it out for a good run, those acids just stay in there and they sort of layer out in the oil. Eventually that settles into bearings, oil pumps, and other internals that, trust me, they don't like it. I've seen it. I had a 911 turbo, again, I mentioned before. I had to do an engine rebuild on it, pulled the engine apart, or my mechanic Ed, and you guys have all met Ed before, but we had to pull the engine apart because it needed a bunch of work. But we did that, and when we got the oil pump apart, we took that, split it, looked inside. It was all eaten and corroded away. We called some experts in the industry, and it turns out the first question they had was, does that car sit a lot? And I said, absolutely it does. They said, that's why. The car sits too much, and the acids start to corrode the internals. So keeping clean oil before the car sits for a long period of time is the best time versus doing it in the spring. And as well, don't do those frequent start stops in the wintertime. Keep the battery on charge is what I would suggest. Always keep a battery tender. You don't need to have problems with this with dead batteries throughout the winter, because if you have dead batteries, sometimes try to open the doors, the battery's dead. I mean, there's always tricks. How do you get that, to force the handle open? It becomes a bit of a nightmare. So you never want to deal with a dead battery and a locked set of doors and windows. It becomes challenging at the very least, and at the very most, possibly damage some equipment. So you don't want to deal with that. Always keep it charged. As well, the other thing I would suggest is fuel stabilizer. I always use fuel stabilizer. And actually, I just did winterization on my boat. So we have a boat that we park out at the acreage, and you guys have seen that acreage too. We've been out there, and we're going to be out there some more. So I'll be sharing some of those experiences with you guys. But essentially, whenever we park the boat for the winter time, I always put fuel stabilizer. So add the fuel all the way up almost to the top, put fuel stabilizer, then you're good to go. Because if the boat sits for a year and then maybe you don't use it for 2 or 3 years because you're just busy with life in the summertime, the stabilizer will help prevent the water from separating out of the gas. Because if you have separation, which does happen, specifically even more so with the alcohol-based fuels that you're getting, or the corn-based fuels that they're using in a lot of cases now, you get more water separation. Of course, if you have pockets of water in your fuel and you run that through fuel pumps, injectors, that can wreck components. It gets expensive. Also, at the very least, vehicles just stop running well. So make sure you use fuel stabilizer, pump up your air and your pressures in your tires, do a good clean cosmetic, make sure you do oil service. Those are the key elements. Some people even take their car off the ground to take some of the weight off the springs and off the tires. That's debatable. I personally have never done that. Well, actually, I shouldn't say that I've done it once with the Lambo. I don't know if it makes a difference or not, but that's something that people suggest too. Then it doesn't strain some of the other parts, and it also gives the shocks a chance to sort of extend out. The tires stay around, and everybody's happy. So there's another option. You could jack it up, put it on 4 sets of jack stands or small wood blocks just off the ground. It doesn't have to be very high. So that's another thing that you can do as well. Now, the other thing, if you're driving your car in the winter like I do, obviously we have P0s here. And what I would do is potentially swap those out with a set of winter skins. Now, personally, I wouldn't use these rims. With the gravel and the salt that they throw on these roads, I can't help but think it just would do a number. If you used it day in, day in and day out, this carbon fiber is going to take a beating. You're going to have more and more chips on this nice satin finish. And I just feel like you're going to ruin these wheels in short order. So I would suggest maybe getting another set of wheels and tires. Then you're good to go if you're going to drive your car in the winter. And I don't know, guys. You guys tell me what you like to do for your vehicle in the wintertime. I mean, that's really just a short and sweet of it. I'm not going to talk your guys' ears off. But now with winter coming around the corner, car enthusiasts like you guys, like myself, we take care of our cars. If you're, just one of these guys, maybe, they lease a BMW or a Benz and they give it back or 2 or 3 years. They don't care. Mostly for posing, mostly sometimes it's for business write-offs. Whatever that is, it doesn't matter. They don't really care as long as it doesn't get dented or look physically damaged and they're keeping up with the standard maintenance. Why do the extras? But personally, for a car that we plan to keep for a period of time, I would suggest doing some of these extra things. They're going to extend the life of the vehicle. They're going to make it look better longer. It's going to run better longer, and you have less problems. But let me know what you guys are doing for your vehicles if you're parking them. Is there something that I miss? Because I'm pretty sure like what I do is typically covers most of the bases. Everything else is standard maintenance. So if you're at a place where, hey, you're by the book, by Jaguar's book or whatever car you're driving, BMW or maybe even a Ford, you've got a GT350. Those are great cars too, by the way. If you've got a car and it's a toy, what are you guys doing for storage? I'd love to hear your ideas because I'm always open. I got some great feedback. Now I have to comment that one of you guys, that this viewer right here is always providing lots of great information. And I learned a few things from him as well. And he shared some stories with me about some other things. In one of my previous videos where I talked about things that you maybe didn't know or little tips and tricks about your F Type, he added a whole bunch of other items. For example, how to isolate your transmission if you're going to be towing the vehicle. You want to do that because if it's engaged, even thrown in neutral, you can actually wreck the transmission if you're towing it on your drive wheels. But he showed how to actually disable that. And there is a feature to that. So I'm learning a lot. I mean, the F Type is still kind of newish for me, so I'm learning on the fly and I'm learning a lot. And check it out because that particular viewer, I want to say a special thanks and shout out to you because you've definitely obviously have a lot of great insight. You have a passion for the car, and I don't blame you. These are awesome and amazing vehicles, but I do really appreciate you sharing a lot of your personal experiences, knowledge, wisdom, and obviously research that you've put into these cars. It's really, really appreciated. So everyone else, and to each and every one of you guys, thanks for joining. I really do appreciate all the support thus far. Creating these videos every single week is really rewarding, and it's awesome to engage with each and every one of you time and time again. And it's great to see the regulars come back, make their comments. You guys are all great supporters, and it really is appreciated. So hope to talk to you real soon. Catch you then. Bye-bye.